2, 1. Welcome to Let's Chat with Derick. I am your host, Derick Phage, and pleased to introduce today's guest. Her name is Stephanie Erickson. She is a family caregiving expert, and we are going to dive into how many of us feel that we have let down our seniors in long-term care facilities and seniors retirement homes across the country. Stephanie, thanks so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm good, Derick. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Let's talk, before we dive into a topic that we're both very passionate about, I wanted to just ask how you and your family are dealing with things personally.
We're doing okay. I mean, I'm probably the most up and down out of everybody in the household, but that's like just a regular day here at our house.
Yeah, I know how you feel. You and I have that roller coaster ride of emotions, and I know that you've lived with anxiety for your entire life, pretty much. So I'm imagining that anxiety has crept in for you a few times.
It has, surprisingly, though, I find I'm doing much better than I would have expected. I mean, definitely already had a germ phobia thing, and I always figured worst case scenario my whole life. So this is just like confirmation that I was absolutely right. And horrible things can happen. But I'm actually doing a bit better than I would have expected. I think part of that is because my kids are doing well. I mean, my daughter's a teenager. She wants to be at school with her friends, so she's not exactly thrilled, but she's present, she's engaged, she's eating, she's exercising, she's hanging out with us. My son's doing well. My husband's working like a regular job, even more hours than usual. So everyone's doing well. So that's helping me feel better, and I'm exercising like crazy.
Oh,
and
good for you.
That is helping.
Yeah, that's something I need. I mean, we've been going on our walks with the dogs and so forth.
Yeah.
Monica's been doing her yoga. I've completely fallen off. I'll be honest with you. Yeah, I haven't done much exercise. I'm the kind of person that needs motivation. And the motivation for me is my personal trainer, George, and not being able to see George. And I feel just horrible for him because he's lost all of his business.
Yeah.
So he's having a tough time like many of us, and I've been telling people, this is the first time I haven't worked in 35 years. It feels so strange. That's why I wanted to put this show together,
Yeah.
You mentioned
changing our routines, but go ahead. Sorry.
For sure. Yeah. You mentioned your husband's working full time and maybe even more. What about yourself? How has it impacted your business?
What business?
Right.
I don't have one, because what I do is visit with seniors. You know what I mean? So I'm getting some calls. I've done a couple Zoom interviews, like very little stuff. Second layer of not being able to see seniors is that my specialty is for legal proceedings for homologations of mandates in the case of incapacity, which is like decision-making documents. And that part of the court has completely closed down. They're only doing emergency procedures. So not only can I not see seniors, the legal part that I'm involved with is shut down. So for sure, nobody's calling me. But you know what, Derick? I mean, I miss seeing families a lot.
Yeah.
But honestly, if I were also struggling with working 30 hours a week and taking care of the house and my kids, I think I would not be doing well emotionally.
Right.
So it's probably actually a really good thing that I can just concentrate on my family right now. The thing that I've wanted to do and take advantage of this time is to write my book. I'm about 2/3 of the way done.
Oh,
and
congrats.
I just haven't even, thank you, but I haven't even been able to have the time yet, even just with having the kids here. So anyways, I'll get to it.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I started writing a book as well. I'm not even close to how far along you are. I just haven't been again. I haven't found the motivation to get to it. So hopefully, maybe these conversations that I have with people like you will help motivate and inspire me. Let's talk a little bit about seniors care before we get to the situation that we're in right now with the pandemic. Maybe you could just give sort of a brief history of seniors care, because you've been somebody that has given a voice to seniors for many, many years, and you've been disappointed in the system.
Very disappointed, and that's actually the nature of my book, talking about what we've been doing wrong and all of the things that we're missing. And for me, the approach that's always been lacking is the holistic approach of caring for a person. I mean, Derick, better than anyone else, we're mind, body, soul, spirit. We're not just the body. And that's what our care has been about for so many years. It's this like shell And what we're going to do is move them here and bathe them like this and feed them like this. And there's none of the other engagement of the other parts of us. Now, there are great residences, there are great professionals, so I don't want to put everybody down, but
Of
I've
course.
been more disappointed than I have been happy with the way our seniors have been cared for.
Yeah.
And then to me, it's been the problem for years and years and years.
I know, and yeah, Monica's done some of her own research on it, and just looking at some of the European models and why we haven't sort of looked more towards what's working in other countries. And I know, one thing that she found was in many of these homes that they have daycares in as well as in a long-term care facility. So you have that interaction between young people and seniors, and they say the difference that that's made in a senior's life, being able to communicate and tell stories and play games and that sort of thing. I find, why aren't we looking towards things that are working better than what we're doing here in this country?
I think that we are a very North America is a producing based society. You have to be productive, you have to be contributing. Otherwise, what's the point of having you around? And I think
Right.
that we're always doing, doing, doing. And because seniors, as they get older, can't do in the traditional ways, contribute in the traditional ways, we just kind of are starting to brush them aside. But their contributions are so great for so many other things, but we don't
Hmm.
value those other parts of a person, their
Yeah.
experiences, their wisdom, all those kinds of things that we could be benefiting from. We just don't care. We're just focused on like stupid things like Instagram and, you know,
Yeah. No, you're
getting
right.
getting a bunch of likes. So yeah, the daycare is a great idea. I mean, animals. I can go on and on
Yeah.
about all the different things we could be doing. Yeah.
Let's focus on what's happening now. And I told you before we started our conversation on air here, is how disappointed I am and how we've let down our seniors in facilities across the country, and how there isn't mandatory testing. I don't even think it's happening still. You know, um, Put in perspective of what's going on in this country, Steph.
Well, I think, I mean, testing is one issue, but for me, it all goes back to staff ratios because when you
Right.
have more people, you can do more things. You can spend more time getting to know somebody, providing emotional support, having more people to provide spiritual support, to have people to do recreation and animal therapy, right? So it's all for me about staffing. And because our staffing ratios have been so poor, and then in comes this virus and it's wiping out a lot of the staff as well who are
Yeah.
having to leave. That's where I think a lot of the breakdown was. So it started for me even pre not having enough staff. The other thing is that we know that in the vulnerable population, things rip through. When there's a flu in a residence, just a regular flu,
Hmm.
a high percentage of people get it. When gastro hits a resident, a high percentage of seniors get it. They're a very vulnerable population. So why we didn't even already have protective gear and all of these like hygiene measures in place, it just astounds me. Why was that not
Yeah.
already there? I don't get it.
Yeah, and it just, I can't even imagine being a senior in this kind of situation. You're already going through a sense of isolation. We see less and less families living in the same city, right? That we're sort of split off in different factions and maybe even not even the same country anymore. So you're missing that human connection that's so important in all of our lives. This situation puts them in even further isolation. I mean, here in the city of Ottawa, I mean, we had a situation where they started telling people that, don't even go to the seniors' home and see them, outside the window and have a conversation, which I think is absolutely ridiculous because, they're worried about, with the nicer weather, more seniors are perhaps start leaving, the home and getting some fresh air, and then they're going to be in contact with people. I think we can reasonably police ourselves, right? And have an understanding that, we understand, the circumstances and how grave they are, and we're not going to go, you know, sit next to a senior on the bench, right?
Right, right.
Um, that kind of thing just drives me absolutely crazy.
I understand the seriousness of trying to regulate how we have contact with seniors because they are so vulnerable and because this virus is so deadly for seniors. So, I sympathize with the legislators and the government who are trying to find ways to protect this population. I mean, it's a bit too late for me. Like, should this been done
Yeah.
pre-COVID already? These measures in place, but they are trying to do something now. But I think the piece that's missing for me is the mental health aspect of what this is doing to the seniors by not having that access to their family members, having the visual contact, even if it's not in-person contact or phone contact or video contact, whatever it could be. And also the mental health of the caregivers, because the caregivers that are calling me, it's not the seniors I'm speaking with right now, it's their family
Right.
members. They feel so guilty and they're devastated and they're scared and they're depressed and they're anxious and they're not sleeping. They're losing their minds because they have no idea what is happening with their loved one in a residence.
Yeah.
It is so sad for the seniors and it is so sad for the families.
Yeah, and let's not forget, for instance, my mom and my stepfather, they don't have internet, they don't have a computer, they don't have a
Yeah.
cell phone, they can't do FaceTime, they can't do Zoom interviews and that sort of thing. So I think, it's so simple for us always just to say, oh, well, you know what, you can just, pick up your phone and do some FaceTime. Well, not everybody has that. And I think we forget that generation isn't connected in the same way that we're connected, right? It
No,
even
it's a
drives me
very good
crazy
point.
the way you get information, right? I'm listening to the radio, and a big demographic of people that listen to radio and watch local TV are seniors, right? They're still interacting in that fashion. Yet, when they're talking about the pandemic and how to get more information, instead of sharing the information on that platform, they tell you to visit a website. Well, sorry, but many seniors don't have access to the internet, so they can't visit a website. So why don't you just tell them the information? I don't know. It's another thing that drives me crazy.
No, it's true. And you're making a good point because, like, for example, my grandmother, who's 97 almost, I can do a FaceTime call with her and she answers and we're fine. We kind of see like her nose down, like she's
Yeah.
not sure how to hold the phone, but but we can interact with her and she's fine. My mother-in-law, who lives in Montreal, she has Skype, and my husband, we've done it only once with her. She doesn't like it. It's stressful for her to get on it and to figure it out, and she doesn't really like it. Plus, she has really bad hearing problems, and we can't get her to the audiologist because it's not really an emergency, although we're trying in our heads to think maybe it is at this point because it's isolating her even more because she needs adjustments. But she just wants to talk on the phone because even the computer, she can't hear. It doesn't make sense for her. So you're right. I mean, the technology is not necessarily a solution. And for taking my mother-in-law, she's really depressed. She's stuck
Yeah.
in her apartment. She has a little tiny balcony. She's used to going out and walking. Her mobility is getting worse because she's not taking her walks now. So what is this going to lead to? I
Hmm.
mean, it's very scary. It's very scary.
So for families out there, Stephanie, I mean, in the circumstances that we find ourselves in right now, what advice can you give them on how to stay connected and to make sure, within that residence, within that long-term care home or that seniors residence, to make sure they're being cared for properly?
Normally the way I tell people to advocate is to be squeaky wheel and not stop and show up and send emails and call. But the staff is so overwhelmed that they're not even getting any responses. So this is part of the problem, is that the usual ways that I would recommend that people get in and get their needs met are not working, because you can
Right.
send 15 emails, you can leave 15 messages and nothing is happening. One of the things I hate to recommend to families, but sometimes it gets to that point, is when you involve the media and make a particular complaint, all of a sudden people are responding and answering. People get very afraid to have a story done on that particular residence. That's, to me, like last case scenario, but unfortunately
Right.
sometimes it works. But we can also go old school. So, like, for example, I had my kids, the last time my husband delivered groceries to my mother-in-law, they wrote her a card, and
Nice.
she broke into tears. That's when my husband said she just started sobbing reading it, because they were telling her, "We know you're having a hard time with mama, blah blah blah," and it just not felt really good for her. So we can go old school and write letters,
Yeah.
but again, now we're assuming that the staff is going to open them and read them.
Right.
And I wish I had advice for things that were going to work. But honestly, I don't know because people are not responding.
Yeah. No, but yeah, and I agree with you. Like I wanted, to make sure that people understand that these caregivers, in all of these facilities, the stress that they find themselves under right now. I mean, so grateful to have them, first of all. But I don't think any of us have a clue of what it must be like, right? In those in any situation, regardless of whether COVID-19 has come to your facility or not, it must be on your mind at all times.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the professionals that work there, those caregivers, I mean, it's a thankless job. They make peanuts and they're asked to do, some of the hardest tasks that there are,
Yeah,
right? So they're overwhelmed, and I'm not blaming them. I'm sure most of them, the high percentage of them, are really doing their best. Then there's also the family caregivers who, this is part of the problem that's happened here in Quebec, is they've provided a lot of the support for seniors. So for example, I have a client who had private care. It was a public residence, but she had hired someone there from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. because her mother is on an end stage dementia, and it would take her about an hour and a half to be hand fed to eat. Otherwise, she
right.
wouldn't eat. Now, there's no public residence that has an hour and a half to sit with somebody. So she had a private caregiver, but now that caregiver cannot get in. And even though we're supposed to be allowing people to go in now who've had a previous relationship, who know the residents, some people are still not being allowed in. They're still being blocked. Someone just told me 2 days ago that someone was dying. So I said there should be a humanitarian visit allowed. They talked to the residents, but the residents still block them. And their mom died
Really?
alone. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So it's
It's
just, that's what I'm
heartbreaking.
saying. It's all the usual routes. It's not working. It's
Yeah.
not working. It's horrible.
And many people
Yeah.
can't afford. I feel very grateful that my father, who has had 3 strokes and a heart attack, and he needs constant care now. We've got private at-home care with 2 caregivers, and he's their only client, right? So we've managed to get ourselves in a situation that works really, really well. But unfortunately, that's not affordable for many people. I do know some friends too that have taken their senior parent out of the
Yeah.
long-term care facility and brought them home
Yeah.
because they were so worried, right? And if I guess that's one thing we can do is encourage people, if you have the right facilities at home and it works for you and your family, that might be the best case scenario for many seniors.
Yeah, and I think people are evaluating that. That's definitely some of the calls I'm getting is, should I bring my mom home? But a lot of those people require very high levels of care.
Yeah,
And a lot of homes are split level, there's stairs, there's not the right equipment. Can you get the equipment out? And for me, the kicker is, if there is an emergency, is there a nurse that can come quickly to the home? Well, the CLSC,
right.
forget it. If you don't already have an open file, you're not going to get someone to come. So then you have to say, if there's an emergency, am I okay with then taking my mom to a different hospital and putting her in a hospital versus back in the residence where she was? And she will not be allowed to get back into that same residence. They're going to reroute her somewhere else. So you kind of have to think about like those worst case scenarios, and will you be able to stomach it before you bring somebody home?
I'm just going to switch directions here quickly. Because you're in Quebec, I just wanted to get maybe your personal perspective. It looks like the province itself, outside of Montreal, is going to be one of the first to begin reopening. How are you feeling about that?
Well, it's hard to even imagine because it's so bad here. But as Francois Legault says, there's like two worlds. There's the CHSLDs and seniors, and then there's the rest of the population. And that's where so many of our deaths and our problems and hotspots, quote unquote, are in these nursing homes. So then I think, well, maybe the regular population, we're going to be okay. But then again, we've all been isolated. So are we really going to be okay? And I just don't feel like, and this is personal, this is not science
Yeah,
based at all, but
absolutely.
I don't feel like we have enough information. Like, I'm not going to send my kids to school because
Mm.
I don't feel like there's enough consistent information about what this is and what can happen out there. It's very conflicting. And so I'm just not comfortable having my kids go back on the 19th, although high schools where they can't go back anyway. So my daughter wouldn't, but
Right.
I'm not sending my son.
Yeah,
you
I'd
know.
be in your position as well. You know, if my daughter Chloe was asked to go back to school here in Ottawa, I don't think I'd be too happy with that. You know,
Yeah,
as you said, I just don't think we have enough information, and I don't
no.
think we've flattened the curve quite enough to, start putting people together and those kinds of numbers right off the bat. Steph, miss you, man. Thank you so
I
much
miss you
for
too,
joining
Derick.
me. Yeah, I really
Yeah, of
appreciate you.
course.
I think this is going to
Anytime.
help a lot of people out there, that have seniors in different facilities. At least, you could share some advice on what they can do now. And if it's something that's extreme, as you said, you may have to go to that most extreme level and try to get the media involved in some way.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't have more advice for caregivers right now. I mean, just, continue being the squeaky wheel and,
Yeah.
don't give up. But I'm sorry that my usual suggestions are kind of falling on deaf ears now. But I will say to caregivers that, they're just filled with guilt and fear all the time. And I'm not even going to try and say don't feel that way, because I get it. You're exactly in the place where you really should be right now, feeling afraid because the unknown is there. But the guilt, if possible, try and release some of that, because caregivers are doing every single thing they can. And all of this is beyond their control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Steph. Well, you and your family,
Okay.
you guys stay safe. Okay.
You too, Derick.
I want to encourage everybody that's watching, by the way, comment below. Let us know what you think. Maybe there's some things that are working that are working for you that you can share with other people. Perhaps you
Oh,
have
yeah.
a family member that's in a home and you've found a way that, helps, that family member, their mental health more than anything. Right.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
comment below and share your pieces of advice, and we'll see you next time you're watching Let's Chat with Derick.